Well, hello, my fabulous friends. I hope you're doing well. Well, I have something for you a little bit different than normal. I have a tarot tale called The Queen of Swords. Any resemblance to anybody living or dead is purely coincidental, and I just like to remind everybody this is a tarot card reading for fun and entertainment purposes only. Shall we begin? The heart of New York, in that gilded age of robber barons and magnificent squalor, beat the relentless rhythm of progress and ruin. Gaslight flared to life at dusk, casting a theatrical glow on the carriages of the Astors and the Vanderbilts as they swept past tenements teeming with a different, more desperate kind of life. With Carnivus, once fashionable mansion of the Finch family, on a fading block of Madison Avenue, the only sound was the solemn ticking of a French mantel clock and the palpable, corrosive silence of a marriage long dead. Violet Finch, a woman whose striking beauty was a currency she had invested poorly, now saw its value diminish daily in the pitiless glare of poverty. She had married Alistair for the prestige of his name and the supposed genius of his financial speculations, a genius that had spectacularly collapsed into disgrace and debt. Barren and bitter, she had convinced Alistair to adopt, to fill the silent, echoing nursery. But the children, Maximilian and Alice, were not a balm for her soul. They were living reminders of what she could not produce. Two more beautiful, neglected ornaments in a house mortgaged to its very foundations. Alistair, a man broken by failed railroad ventures and ill-advised dalliances in electric dynamos, had retreated into a fog of brandy and recrimination. The foreclosure notice, with its cruel, perfect calligraphy, was the formal obituary of their life of pretense. It was while hunting for something to sell that Violet found in a dusty hatbox a tarot deck, its cards cool and heavy, the silvered edges seeming to absorb the gloom of the attic. The images were esoteric and haunting, rendered with a mystical intensity that felt ancient and alive. A dizzying, dangerous idea sparked in her mind. This was no parlor game. It was an oracle, a conduit to fate itself. This would be her deliverance. She would create a ritual. Each Sunday, after the house had fallen quiet, she would draw but a single card. And with every draw, she would channel her ferocious will towards a single outcome, the 10 of Pentacles, for its promise of old money and dynastic security, or the King of Pentacles, the master of all earthly fortune. Alongside this newfound faith, she continued her own small deceptions. From the kitchen, she bottled a concoction of sweetened tea and herbs she called Violet's Veritable Vitality Elixir, selling it with a silver tongue to desperate housewives and hypochondriacs, its promises as empty as her own heart. The first Sunday arrived. Violet's breath caught in her throat. Her hand hovered over the deck and then descended, drawing the top card. She turned it. The magician. The magician. She could build and manifest anything that she wanted. Of course, she could manifest money to pull her out of this squalor, perhaps manifest the 10 of Pentacles. A shiver ran down her spine, thinking of the riches that she could create just simply by her own hand and thoughts, the easy way out. She didn't remember that it was also the trickster card, and talked about her trickster elixir that she was selling. A week later, a letter arrived. A distant relative, a name she vaguely recalled, had perished in a boating accident, leaving her a small, almost paltry inheritance. But it was enough to forestall the bank for a month. But its true value was in cementing Violet's belief the magic was real. Her faith emboldened, she became more reluctant with the second draw. Stakes now terrifyingly real. Holding her breath, she turned the Lovers. The card depicted Adam and Eve in a state of grace, blessed by an angel. That week, a strange harmony descended. Alistair, unusually sober for a whole evening, spoke of her and their early days, a ghost of the man she thought she had married. He gifted her a small, exquisitely painted portrait miniature of herself as a young woman. The next morning, she found a crack had peered across its porcelain surface. Maximilian, seeing it on her dresser, traced the crack with his sad finger, a silent witness to its, and their, imperfection. Before drawing the third card, Violet hesitated for a full minute, her heart hammering. Could the good luck hold? Four of Wands. A vision of celebration, a harvest festival under a canopy of wands. An invitation, thick and creamy, arrived from Mrs. Astor herself for a garden party. It was a chance to be seen, to reclaim their standing. But surrounded by the magnificent gowns and casual cruelty of New York's elite, Violet and Alistair were pariahs. They were a tableau of failure, and the whispers followed them like a foul stench. Alice, watching from an upper window of the great house where the children had been sequestered, saw her mother's forced smile and understood it was a mask. Week 4. The ritual was now a trial. Her hand shook. 8 of Wands. A flight of staves soaring through the clear sky, signifying swift news and sudden journeys. Alas, a telegram came. A consortium of investors in Philadelphia, intrigued by Alistair's audacious but failed theories on alternating currents, summoned him for a consultation. He was gone in a flurry of packed bags and frantic hope. The house was blissfully quiet. Violet even managed to sell an entire case of her elixir to a gullible new widow, a small profit, a pleasing, if insignificant, thrill. Dread warred with desperate hope as she drew the fifth card. The Star, a beautiful naked woman pouring water from 2 pitchers under a sky of brilliant stars. Hope and serenity. Violet wondered if Alistair's recently passed mother was looking down upon them. Alistair returned, his eyes alight. The consortium had given him a laboratory, a stipend, a new chance. He spoke of currents and conduits, a language of renewed ambition that Violet found intoxicating. For a moment, a genuine, terrifying hope took root in her heart. The fall was swift and brutal. The sixth draw felt like a betrayal. She turned the card with a snap of her wrist. 6 of Pentacles, but in reverse. A wealthy man haughtily dropping coins to beggars, the card of ill-advised charity and bad debt. Alistair's consortium were sharks. The contract he signed in his hopeful haste was ruinous, in debiting him for a generation. The stipend was a leash, and the first thing it choked was the household budget, starting with the cook's wages. Violet will have to cook for herself now. The seventh card chilled her to the bone. The Empress in reverse. The Great Mother, symbol of fertility and domesticity, sat on a barren throne. A creative and literal sterility invaded Violet's life. Her attempts to create a new, more potent elixir resulted in a foul-smelling sludge. The few remaining servants grew insubordinate. The house itself seemed to sigh with decay. She looked at the children, their faces pale from meager meals, and felt the sharp, familiar sting of her own barrenness, a failure the world would never let her forget. Week 8. She could barely bring herself to touch the deck. 8 of Pentacles in reverse. A craftsman walking away from his unfinished work. Laziness, poor quality. Alistair's project in Philadelphia was a disaster. His brief spark of genius was gone, replaced by apathy and drink. He returned home a defeated man, the laboratory repossessed. That week, a woman who had bought Violet's elixir for her ailing mother returned, screaming that it was nothing more but sweetened water and lies, demanding her money back. Yet Violet continued. The 10 of Pentacles must be in there. The 3 of Wands in reverse followed, a card of plans falling apart. A potential buyer for Alistair's father's collection of rare books backed out. A letter promising a possible position for Alistair at the university was revealed to have been sent to the wrong Finch. Every door slammed shut. By the 10th week, Violet felt she was in a fever dream. She drew the devil. The card was a terrifying allegory of a caped demonic figure presiding over a man and a woman loosely chained to his pedestal. She was chained to this house, to Alistair, but most of all to this deck of cards and the false hope of her elixir. Her deceptions and her magical thinking were the same prison. A cruel reprieve came with the Tower in reverse. The lightning strike hit the house next door, starting a fire that was extinguished before it could spread to their own home. They were spared, but the smell of smoke and the proximity of utter disaster lingered for days, a reminder of the abyss they were dangling over. The descent quickened. The Page of Swords in reverse brought malicious gossip, an article in a society paper hinting of a prominent family on the verge of scandalous collapse. The Knight of Swords in reverse manifested as Alistair, in a drunken rage, shattering a case of his father's prized porcelain. His fury, a chaotic, frightening storm that sent the children scurrying to the attic like frightened mice. Then, the 5 of Pentacles. 2 beggars in rags, one with a crude crutch, hobbying past the beautiful warm light of the church window. The card was a mirror. They were now truly destitute, shunned, and isolated. The final foreclosure date was set. The house grew cold, the pantry bare. The Eight of Cups showed a man turning his back on his accomplishments to walk into a wasteland. Alistair gave up. He locked himself in the master bedroom. The only sign of his presence, the empty brandy bottles Alice would silently remove from outside his door each morning. She couldn't bear to continue, but she knew the Ten of Pentacles or the King of Pentacles was in the deck. It had to be. It has to be. Where is it? Ah, the King of Swords. The King of Swords brought the lawyer, a man with a cold face and colder eyes, who spoke truths of legal truths that were sharp and merciless as his blade. He laid out the timeline for their eviction, the seizure of all their assets, and the end of their world. After he was done, they wouldn't even have their name. Please, she prayed to whatever dark power resided in the cards. Please, now. She turned it. Ah, the Ten of Pentacles in reverse. A family's legacy in ruins, inheritance lost, wealth turning to dust. Was it a death sentence? Her last hope, the King of Pentacles, now seemingly impossibly distant, with a sense of grim finality, she drew the next card. She gasped, death in reverse, a slow, agonizing end, a refusal to let go, to accept the inevitable. She stared at the Grim Reaper on her kitchen table, and then she heard it. From the floor above, from Alistair's self-imposed prison, a single, deafening gunshot. The sound echoed, then faded, leaving a silence more profound than before. Alice and Maximilian, drawn by the sound, appeared in the doorway, their small forms frozen, and their eyes wide with horror that had no name. Violet did not move. Her gaze was fixed on the deck. The cards had not failed her. This was not the end. It was a necessary step. With a strange electric calm, she reached for the deck one last time. Her hand did not tremble. She drew a single card and turned it over. The Queen of Swords. A stern, unemotional woman sat on an ornate throne, a crown upon her head, her gaze fixed forward. In one hand she held a single upright sword, a symbol of truth and judgment. Violet stared at the image, and a slow, brilliant smile spread across her face. It was not a card of sorrow or loss or judgment. It was a title, The Widow. The cards hadn't lied. They had simply been clearing the path. Alistair, the failed King of Pentacles, was the obstacle. He was the ruinous legacy of the reverse 10. With him gone, her destiny was reset. Her true King of Pentacles, her wealthy savior, was still out there, waiting for her in the deck of her life. There was no grief. There was only clarity. The next morning, she made a discreet inquiry and met with a grim-faced man who procured labor for the city's textile mills. She did not flinch as she signed the papers. The small purse of cash she received for Maximilian and Alice, feeling heavy and full of promise. They did not cry as they were led away, only looked back at her with the same silent, vacant expressions they had worn for years. Violet used the money for two things: a new dress of deep emerald silk that scandalously matched her eyes, and a class ticket on the biggest yacht in the world, the Cunard ocean liner bound for Europe. As the great ship pulled away from the grimy docks of New York, Violet stood on the promenade deck. She did not look back at the city that held her past. She faced the open ocean, wind whipping at her new clothes, a determined, predatory smile on her lips. She was no longer a failed wife. She was the Queen of Swords. And as the tarot had told her, her king was still out there, waiting to be found. The end. Thank you for listening. Please take good care. See you online. Bye for now.